Okay, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Going to be talking about the P80 conversion. Um, I missed a bunch of steps in there on my videos. Sorry about that. I meant to do better, but I just didn't. So here it is. She is all done, ready to be flown for the first time in her finished state. It has flown quite a few times, just in primer with no detail, no cockpit, none of that. So it won't be the first flight. But tomorrow we're going out, do some flying, and yep, P80's going, A4 and the MiG-29, and I just finished up my son's little E-Flight Texan repaint today. Did the last couple days, so I did 4 repaints since vacation started 10 days ago. So, my garage is a mess. I've been super busy. I've been super late nights in the garage. Wife loves it. So anyways, here's a P80. For those of you who are just watching this series of videos for the first time, this started out as a Freewing T33 converted to a P80. Some might think that a P80 is just a single seat T33, and while that's true, there's quite a few differences with the airframe that make it different. The first being that the T33 has a longer fuselage to accommodate the second seat. So if you go back to my first couple of videos, what I ended up doing was cutting the fuselage off, taking out a 2 1/4 inch section, putting it back together, and then bodyworking it. And while that sounds simple, there's quite a few changes in the ducting because of the angle of everything, and when you change it, it messes it up. So there's quite a bit of rework done in the inlets, and I also did away with the cheater hole because I don't like cheater holes, and I fly for dirt, but mostly for looks. So that's gone, and I had to do a number of ducting mods to make these little tiny inlets work without a cheater hole, or a big cheater hole I should say, because there are cheater holes, they're just not large. So yeah, this is it. She's all finished up. Callie did the decals for it. Let me spin this around and get some light in there. So I did a little cockpit, nothing crazy. That's all handmade. That's 3 layers of plastic. So there's 2 layers of white, both painted black, and then there's a layer clear in the middle. What you do is you paint everything black, and then you scribe off the black paint to leave the white plastic. So that's actually white plastic exposed. It's not super detailed if you look at it up close, but it does the job. And I meant to use a jet hanger Saber Pilot for this. It was a little too small, and I had this one in my drawer that I got from a friend, and it's just about the perfect size. Not quite period correct helmet and mask, but what are you gonna do, you know? This is an old MGA Pilot from the 80s and 90s, so this is like a 30-year-old pilot in this thing, but it's pretty cool. So yeah, so I got it all finished up, kind of this traditional foam refinish, so lightweight filler in the panel lines and the dents and stuff. And also this one I made it a one-piece model, so the wing and the fan hatch are no longer separate, along with the tails. Tails cannot be removed at this point, so there's no more seams, no more screws exposed. And that's one thing that I think makes the foamies look a lot nicer, is getting rid of all those huge gaps around the wings and tails and hatches and stuff. So that's where we're at. My dad 3D printed some really cool parts for me. So we got these little nozzles, or vents I mean, and splitter plates. Those are really cool additions to the model. So yeah, let's see. Oh, I made these gun ports. Focus. These gun ports are made from carbon fiber tube. So, and the nose wheel is a custom carved out wheel. Come on, focus. Same method I used on my A4 wheels, so if you watch that video you'll know how I made it. But pretty much, I think this is actually a focus. Jeez, this is a A4 wheel that I turned down a little bit to fit inside of this. In fact, this is even modified. Man, this thing is not focusing. So I had to carve all this out to fit a bigger wheel. because P80s, T33s, and even this is kind of small for scale, but they had pretty big wheels on them. So it looks pretty good. I'll just kind of do a walk around. So I actually did, that's zinc chromate, that color. So I did zinc chromate and some silver paint chips, or simulated paint chips, because these would have been zinc chromate underneath the gray top coat. So all this is just done by hand. It's all pencil. Unfortunately, because I filled in the panel lines, I couldn't see them anymore, so I had to use a 3-view and go back and put all these in by hand. So kind of neat. Didn't take too long, but man, this thing is not focusing tonight. Yeah, it looks cool. Got, like, access panels and stuff, things that you would access a lot on the airplane. I dirtied up more and did paint chips. Like, for instance, this line right here is actually where the fuselage on the real one would come off and expose the entire engine for engine changeouts. And these right here are actually called blow-in doors. They're aux air doors, kind of like cheater holes for real jets, and they're spring loaded, and they would suck in as the motor needed more power. And if I were to ever do this model again, I would actually make these functional. I think that would be really cool. So let's see, if you hadn't watched any of my other videos, you could know that I've done some other mods. When this was a T33, I did some mods to it. So the tail cone is actually smaller than the original size. Basically how you do that is you cut a wedge out from the bottom, and then you bring in the pipe area together and glue it back together. So turned out pretty good. Like I said, these things are kind of rough. You get up close and you see, you know, junky stuff like that, but from a few feet they look pretty good. Got the insides all painted. Let me get it flipped over and I can show you guys the other mods I've done to it. Okay, so here we are at the bottom side. One of the things I addressed when this was still a T33, but also applies to the P80, are the landing gear, the mains more specifically. From the factory, these come with a kind of a stink bug attitude on the ground. The back end sits high in the air, which on the real T33 or P80 is the exact opposite. The real ones, they kind of squat. They sit low in the back. And like I've said before, the way models look on the ground is a huge part for me of how well a model looks, whether it looks good or not. It has to look right when it's sitting on the ground, and so I had to change that. So these are actually ME262 struts and wheels, which honestly are kind of weak. They're not very strong units, and they bend pretty easy. But the tires are kind of the right shape and size, and the struts actually compress. When it sits on the ground, they're fully compressed. I have the springs cut so it sits lower, so it sits really low, which is how the real ones sit. From the factory, I think the tire comes about right here, and as you know, it doesn't compress this way, it goes back because it's trailing length. And you know, those struts work amazing for flying off of grass and dirt and rough fields and stuff like that, but it just doesn't look very good. So that's what I did for the mains. I also did speed brakes, which are a pretty fun little mod. They actually work pretty well. It's neat to land the airplane full dirty with flaps and speed brakes hanging out, because you come in, you fly the model just like a real airplane. You use the power to control descent rate versus stick inputs. So it actually makes landing it pretty easy. And this thing actually lands really nice. It's nice not having the cheater hole anymore. And in fact, this thing lands nicer with the cheater hole covered up versus the stock cheater hole. And the reason why that is, the airplane can get kind of pitchy on landing if you're changing the throttle a lot. So it affects the pitch trim of the airplane depending on where your throttle is set. So with that covered up and that issue gone, it lands more like a traditional sport model, like a straight wing prop airplane sport model. It literally is one of my favorite airplanes to fly. It's it's a really nice flying airplane. So that's it for mods. Just kind of show you guys some of the detail on the bottom. So this weathering method, my friend Chris Wolf taught me. You basically use water-based paint after you're done with the panel lines. Do the panel lines first, and you come back in and you put like a little blip of paint on there. You sweep it back with your finger. If you don't like it, you just take a wet rag, kind of wipe it off or wipe some of it off. And that's kind of where we get this look. You don't want to get too crazy. You know, weathering a model is tricky. You got to study a lot of pictures of the real airplane first. But also you just got to know, like, you know, all these panel lines wouldn't be oily or dirty. Only in areas where there's hydraulics or fuel or oil being stored or moved around would you see leaks. And so you wouldn't just dirty up all the panel lines. Doesn't look right. So you just, you know, got to study some pictures. You know, this is where the engine is on the real one. And so there's oil leaking out of the motor. There's, you know, access panels and things that, you know, come apart. And also I did some of these like little vents by hand, just penciled in. So those look kind of cool when they're all done. On my MiG, I actually airbrushed them, which was kind of fun. I plan on doing a little video like this for the MiG to show you up close some of the stuff that I did on that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Super awesome flyer, and we're supposed to get some in-air footage tomorrow at the lake bed when we go flying. So hopefully there'll be some more video coming soon. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. We'll see you in the next one.